Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be teaching you about chaos and order and how to leverage that knowledge to your advantage. Alright, so before I get into the practical application of this knowledge, I want to first cement the fact that chaos and order are like yin and yang. They are intertwined opposites. So you cannot have chaos without order, and you cannot have order without chaos. Also, chaos and order is a categorical dichotomy along the same spectrum, and like all other dichotomies is a false dichotomy. So it's sort of like up and down. We as human beings need the knowledge of up and down to exist here on this planet where we have gravity, and we would not be able to get by without this false dichotomy. But if we go out into outer space, we realize that there's no real up or down out there because gravity isn't a constant. And so chaos and order is a lot like this as well, and it really depends on the perspective of the person who's deeming something chaotic or something orderly. So a disgusting, chaotic mess for us as human beings might be a perfectly ordered feast for a maggot. But of course, we as human beings have our own biased perspective as to what we consider orderly and what we consider chaotic. But if we want to use the knowledge of this dichotomy to our advantage and become a highly developed person, we must be able to recognize the order in the chaos and the chaos in the order. And in that way, we can weed out old, corrupt, or obsolete orders, and we can embrace regenerative chaos. Now again, I'm going to get more into that at the end of the video, but one of the things you have to know about the human perspective is that we're pretty much hardwired to prefer what we consider orderly and to not prefer and resist against what we consider chaotic. But this actually leaves us in a space of preferring our comfort zone only and not really embracing new opportunities for change and growth, because the dichotomy of order and chaos primarily has to do with the fact that reality is always in flux and that this is the way things progress and grow. Now, of course, preferring order makes good rational sense because if something is familiar to us, if something is orderly, it's more predictable, it's more safe. But something that's more predictable isn't necessarily a better thing. So, for example, we can kind of end up like the frog in boiling water, where we sit in the water and we think it's fine and it's just slowly heating up and we're like, oh, I'm still just a frog in hot water, this is cool, I'm taking a little bath. But eventually, without us realizing it, our order, our comfort zone becomes very, very dangerous and leads to degenerative chaos. Also, regenerative chaos tends to be lumped in with degenerative chaos, and we don't recognize that chaos can actually be a very important step in personal growth and in growth on just the micro and the macro level. So it's a bit like a control burn, where everything is burnt away, everything is chaotic, but then new things can grow in its place. And another thing to understand about the nature of this reality is that it is constantly in flux. Nothing stays the same. Every moment is very different from the next. And so when it comes to order and chaos, these two things are in constant interplay with one another. So order always grows up out of chaos, and then when that order is done with its life, it devolves back into chaos. And this is the nature of things. It's like an ocean. The wave comes up as a new order for the ocean, and it draws back into the ocean, and it becomes chaos again. And then new order grows back up out of the ocean. And this is how we grow, not even just as individual human beings, but as an ecosystem, politically, socially, etc. So a healthy relationship between chaos and order has to do with regeneration and growth, because it's the weakness of the cell that is the vigor of the organism. Certain things must die and fall away and be replaced by new things, and those things must eventually die and fall away and be replaced by new things. So to show an analog of regenerative growth and how chaos and order works together, we want to consider the life cycle of a butterfly. So we start off with a caterpillar. The caterpillar is an ordered being. And the caterpillar basically eats and eats and eats until it reaches its point of maximum expansion for that particular order. So it basically gets to a certain point where there's a point of diminishing returns of itself as a caterpillar, and then it goes into its cocoon phase. This is the chaos phase. Now, we might not think about it as very chaotic because it doesn't look chaotic from the outside. It's just a cocoon just hanging there. But inside of the cocoon, it's not like the caterpillar just grows wings. It actually dissolves into a primordial soup, and so it dissolves into complete chaos. It loses all of its structure, it loses all of its order. And then from that goo, the new organism starts to constellate. So the butterfly starts to grow directly from that chaos, and it develops and develops and develops in that cocoon phase until it's ready to emerge as a newly ordered being, as the butterfly, capable of flight. And that's the main idea of expansion and growth through this process of chaos and order, is we start as a simpler form, we reach our point of maximum expansion as that simpler form, and then chaos happens, and that regenerative growth that comes from the chaos, and from the primordial soup that is that chaos, then new order emerges, new exalted order that is capable of flight. So oftentimes, if we find ourselves down in this primordial soup, down in the chaos, we'll often long for our caterpillar days, when things were simpler, when things made more sense. But that is a lack of vision. So those who have vision can actually start to see the butterfly beginning to emerge from that primordial soup, and they can have vision and they can start to notice opportunities for growth in those chaotic times. Now, when it comes to chaos, whether it be degenerative chaos or regenerative chaos, we can always use that as an opportunity for growth because chaos is the birthplace to new orders. Now, with degenerative chaos, it comes more as a reaction to trying to maintain the status quo when aspects of the status quo are no longer right for us. So in our life, if we're holding on to an old job or a relationship that's not working for us, what will happen is degenerative chaos will come about and other aspects of your life will fall apart because you're trying so hard to hold on to things that are meant to fall away. So that's degenerative chaos. With regenerative chaos, it's when you have actually let go of what's not right for you anymore. You've let go of that job, you've let go of that relationship, and then suddenly there's this big dearth of order in your life. But from the rubble of the towers that you've knocked down, you start to find yourself, you start to find new opportunities for growth. And so obviously regenerative chaos is far more healthy, but that said, you can still use degenerative chaos as a way to move through life and to get to a point of change, but you have to use the degenerative chaos to actually let go of those orders that you've been clinging to. So ultimately, the litmus test between degenerative chaos versus regenerative chaos is that degenerative chaos comes from resistance to change, regenerative chaos comes from the embrace of change. And anytime you're facing chaos in your life, if you actually lean into the chaos, you can use that to spiral up in your life. Even if chaos feels like a huge loss because you've lost the current order, it gives you more space to actually spiral up, evolve, change, and grow. Whereas if you resist change, what happens is you spiral down, you stagnate, and you stymie your growth. So in terms of how to use this information to your advantage, it gives you this clue that whenever you're faced with chaos, you have to take a moment to do some positive focus. So basically, if you're in a situation where you've just lost a partner, or you've just lost a job, or if you've just lost something even larger, or even a small thing, ultimately, you can use that as a springboard into something brand new, something regenerative. So you have to use positive focus to take inventory of all the possibilities that spring up out of that chaos. So one of the things that happened to me actually several years ago, right around the time I started my channel, well, a little bit before, is that I had lost my job as a teacher that I had, worked very hard to make that career happen. And I had been focused on that since I was basically 5 years old. Very, very big into like being a public school teacher. And it really didn't work out. It was really clear to me that I wasn't in the right position. Well, it actually wasn't clear to me, but I basically was lying to myself the whole time to keep things going. But I ended up losing that job. My contract didn't get renewed, and I knew that that would be perceived poorly. And so to me, it was like the nail in the coffin on this big, long, like 20-plus year dream that I had. And so from the rubble of that, I basically got a blank slate, and a blank slate that I hadn't had my whole entire life. And I thought, well, what do I actually want to do with my life? And because I was focused positively toward the situation and taking inventory of the potential for growth, that's why I ended up creating my channel. And now, as a life coach, and as somebody who creates this type of content, I'm doing something that I never really thought that I would be doing before, and it's so much more fulfilling. So it's these times when you can start to, when you're in the middle of the rubble, when you're down in the primordial goo of life, you can start to see, okay, what are the potential paths that I could go down from here? How do I turn this loss into a win? And really that's what you're trying to do whenever you're faced with chaos, whenever things fall apart. It's like, okay, I've lost something, but how do I turn this loss into a win? How do I make this benefit me? But of course, you won't be able to do this until you accept the chaos, until you embrace the chaos. If you are still in a state of resistance to the loss you've had and you're still grieving that loss, you're not going to be able to move on. And so the first step is to accept the change that's happened and to understand that everything is always in flux and that chaos is just part of life and misfortune is just part of life. And if you can focus positively toward that situation, even if it's something that has caused you a lot of grief and a lot of pain, you can spin it as a positive thing for yourself and you can spiral up as opposed to spiraling down. So we have acceptance of the chaos, embrace of the chaos, taking inventory of all of the potential paths, and then picking one of those paths, going down it, exploring it more. And when we can accept and recognize the primordial soup for what it is, we can actually ride that wave into whatever's trying to constellate, and focus on the positive elements of that and really try to capitalize on that for our own personal growth, our growth as a species, and then also just to have a sense of peace in all of the flux that's always happening and the ups and downs of life and the ups and downs of nature and all of these other elements that are always changing. Anyway, that's all I have for you for now. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead, click the like button below and subscribe. Also, if you're interested in life coaching or shadow work tarot, I'll leave a link down below in the description box. These services are both really great if you want to get some clarity and some direction in life. The shadow work tarot is actually a non-psychic tarot reading. It's interactive. It's meant to hone in on whatever is basically being kept down in the shadow, and so it's a lot like my life coaching practice as well, because it's based on a lot of questioning and using the archetypal images on the tarot cards as a guide into deeper understanding of the self. Anyway, so that's all I have for you for now, and until next time, keep becoming more you.